All right, everyone. I am back with part 2 of the IIA Deep Dive. I'm your host, Goldpilled, here with the Goldpilled stream, and we are going to go further into the in-depth details of IIA operations, interactive internet activities. Well, that's one name it's known by. And in between the two videos here, I reviewed the information some more, and I put together quite a few puzzle pieces, and I'm gaining a rather good understanding of these operations here now, and it's quite interesting. And actually, the more you learn about it, kind of the sicker you get in your stomach about the current environment of the online truth community here. So let's get into it, and you'll see what I mean. Let's share the screen and get over to the web. All right, so we're going to start out with the Patrick Bergy part that I had pulled up here. I got to review that info, and Patrick Bergy's an interesting character here. He is quite literally, like a founding father of the IIA. Apparently, he joined the military at 40 years old. He was an IT security specialist or something, and he joined up there, and they put him on the creation of this technology back in 2007. And like I said, this is right around the time YouTube was being bought out by Google. And Bergie says it here that they seen the importance and the potential of IIA. So they contracted out to develop technology to take advantage of that potential. So here, this Victim of the Swamp is this site. I'm assuming it's Bergie's site himself. Apparently he has another site, an older one, but he's trying to transition stuff to this site, and it looks like it's kind of just a jumbled mess, like incomplete. He started a project and never really finished it. But these two pages I have pulled up came up in search, so I'm going over these, but they have the most info. And the old site, it looks like a jumbled mess, so I'm not sure how much good information is in there, but if you want to look at them, more power to you. It's victimoftheswamp.com. But this page here starts out with the memorandum I had, and then it's Bergie's little thing here, and I'm going to go over this real quick. And this is April 6, 2019. Now, this other page is actually October 2017, so 2 years before this. But apparently he made this page because he never seen this memo before. So he just discovered it and put like a little blog post out, I guess. But he says here, I've written about this before, but I just found this memorandum. He's there for, 2 years I've heard journalists try to report social media being used as psychological warfare, but none of them, has ever called it by the proper nomenclature, which is IIA. They use every other word, but he never sees a single example of them calling it, what it is. And he goes on here to say, when I say I literally pioneered IIA, I'm not just exaggerating. Below is both a copy of the Defense Department recognition of my involvement, along with the IIA Defense Department memorandum, which is the one I already showed, and how it is implied, which we're going to go over that memorandum. So here's kind of like a letter of recommendation he got from the chief of Interactive Internet Activities Branch, and it's Bradford Burris, Major, United States Army. He's the chief of IIA branch, and he says how Bergie was an amazing person and super intelligent and figured out all the problems and did great work creating this IIA program for them. And when he did this, it was kind of in Baghdad. This was still Iraq time, so they must have kind of started this, with intent towards foreign actors. But you better believe it's being used in the homeland here against domestic terrorists, so to say. So there's the proof that they had him out there. And like I said earlier, he was contracted about 4 months after the release of that memorandum. And here he mentions it again. I wonder if my employer, General James Jones, General Jim Jones, had any role in the request for proposal put out by the Department of Defense following this memorandum. If so, that means your taxpayer dollars funded the development of what became his private company's intellectual property rights and was made commercially available with the intentions to use it for altering the outcome of American elections. We called it the Shadow Net. So the program that he came up with and stuff there, they called it the Shadow Net. And I guess that's the basis for Millie Weaver's Shadowgate documentary. Well, if anyone's seen that InfoWars interview where Bergie came on after Millie released Shadowgate and the whole arrest thing, and everybody thought she was being targeted because of releasing that video when the actual arrest was something completely unrelated to that. Bergie went on there and called out Roger Stone because General Jim Jones, this was his upper boss, major connections with Roger Stone. And then that brings in the whole Steve Pieczenik that I talked about in my previous video. So you have all these people connected with psychological operations and IIA, General James Jones, and they're just all swarming at InfoWars. They're just Roger Stone, best buddies with old Alex Jonestown there for the whole Trump campaign, his election, his 4 years in office. Roger Stone was InfoWars. They were tight. Then you got Steve Pieczenik on there the whole time with Trump, and they were tight. And you can't tell me that's not psychological operations. That's not IIA operations. The whole InfoWars shenanigans, their whole outfit, probably everyone involved, 100% bullshit. If you put any faith or credibility in Alex Jones and InfoWars at this point, I'm sorry, but you're not that smart. You're not that smart, or you're super ignorant and you don't want to learn anything more and become smarter. Because these connections are undeniable, they're proven, they are fact. And for the one commenter who commented on my K. Griggs, Alex Jones, Pieczenik video that said, dude, you don't lay out any facts or anything, you're just a retard. I'm sorry. This here is facts. What I am showing you, these connections, these puzzle pieces, this is factual information. I understand, what constitutes a fact, in our current era with all the deception and lies and the current IIA that's taking place online in the truth community. What is facts is, a subjective term there. But these connections, you cannot deny this. You cannot deny that General James Jones, you cannot deny the connection with Roger Stone and Steve Pieczenik, and Steve Pieczenik's role as a psychiatrist in psychological warfare, and they're just best buddies with Alex Jones. Alex Jones touted he got Trump elected. They played a whole operation to push Trump to try to get him elected. And according to Bergie here, the Clinton campaign was using IIA operations against Trump. So it sure seems like there's just IIA going on left and right, all around, enough for everybody. Lying to everybody till they can't lie no more. This stuff is indisputable. So you say, oh, there's no facts. Well, there's facts here. If you can't discern this, if you can't if you can't comprehend this, I'm sorry, but you probably have an 80 IQ. So you need to either check yourself or start doing some more studying and bolster that intelligence up here, because we are running out of time. We are running out of time to try and turn things around. Not even turn things around. We just need to wake up to what the hell is going on here. People are so dumb and ignorant, and they have no idea what they're up against. They have no idea any of this stuff's going on. They're just living their blissful life. Ignorance is bliss in the Matrix. We just need to wake the hell up before we can do anything. And that's what I'm trying to do here. Get people to think higher and wake the hell up. So I got off on a little tirade there, so let's move on. So that's the end of that page here. We're going to go over this memorandum because it lays out it's good detail about the IIA. So let's close this and go back over here to Bergie. So this is 2017 Bergie did this. So he's been putting out blogs and articles way before his notoriety with Millie Weaver and the Shadowgate. Because that Shadowgate happened in August 2020. And that's when Bergie came on InfoWars. That's when I first heard about him, was August 2020. So this is 3 years prior to that. And Bergie even has a book out. It's called Victim of the Swamp, How Something Destroyed a 4-year-old private or something. And it's only $15, and he says he goes into IIA in more detail in there. And I'm kind of curious. I wouldn't mind reading it. I'll see if I can find ebook or digital copy of it. But so here's interactive internet activities, the U.S. government's nomenclature for fake news, October 2017. It's by Patrick Bergy. Here's Tampa, Florida. Since virtually days after the U.S. presidential election, when the Clinton campaign covertly released the now infamous British dossier on Trump, all you hear in the news is how the Russians were trying to alter the outcome of the election. We now know it was a multi-million-dollar fake news work of IIA fiction by the Clinton campaign to bring down or weaken a democratically elected president, while destroying any hope of better U.S. relations with Russia. Now, whether you can believe that or not is one thing. You know, I have trouble trusting people who work on the inside like this. They're part of the system. They work for the beast. And then they come out and, oh, I'm going to blow the whistle and stuff. I do have trouble trusting those people and believing it. But that doesn't mean their information isn't good and there isn't truth to it. And the whole dossier on Trump, that was a bunch of BS. So this claim that it was IIA operations is very likely the truth. Because we'll go on here, and he lays out that the IIA applications that he developed, they were retained by the company he was contracting for, and they became their intellectual property rights, like mentioned in that page I just closed. And then they made it commercially available. So there is IIA applications commercially available for whoever wants to pay for it. And that was the Jim Jones's company. And that's what he said. Your taxpayer dollars developed this applications, and then Jim Jones retained it for his personal company and then cashed in on it commercially. So it's out there. Everybody's using it. It goes into, this stuff is only supposed to be used against foreign people. It's not to be used on Americans, but we all know there's workarounds for that. So you know they're using it on us. And this is back in the early days of it. So just think now, it is heavily used on us. The military uses interactive internet activities, or IIA, as the psychological operations nomenclature for tactical social media warfare program like this. And it says to the left. And here it mentions the Joint Publication 313.2, Psychological Operations, which I went earlier and said they changed the name of it to Military Information Support Operations, MISO. So it's MISO now. It's not Psychological Operations, because remember, it was the pejorative terms. They were negative terms, so they had to change it. And it lays out here, and it says, defines IIA as follows: psychological operations and computer network operations. So PSYOPs and CNOs work together for IIA to reach intended targets. It says IIA can be both covertly and overtly support other PSYOP components, such as information operations. That's another name I mentioned it falls under. Then the CNO, computer network operations. Many countries do it. Most have their own name for it. I use IIA because when I was contracted by the U.S. government from 07 to 10 to pioneer this technology, this is what we called it. The image on the right is of Patrick Bergy of the 4th Psychological Operations Group, Psychological Operations Task Force in Baghdad, Iraq, where I provided IIA contract support from 07 to 08. So there's Bergie in Iraq next to a poster of his Psychological Op Task Force. So there's pretty much no doubt about it. This man pioneered the technology. We were basically tasked with moving psychological operations from airplane dropped leaflets to tactically targeting social networks, blogs, and online news feeds. It was truly a challenge, as the DOD was strictly prohibited from ever targeting or influencing American citizens. Other such government agencies with 3-letter acronyms did not have such restrictions. So, in these publications that I have here and downloaded, it mentions how they originally used leaflets dropped from planes as the original psychological operations. Now, they don't do that. It's digital, and they call it eFlits. So they create eFlits, not to mention targeting social networks, blogs, and online news feeds and stuff. They even create fake news feeds to do stuff. So let's continue on here. It was 07, and the true potential of information operations using social media was just being understood. Apple had just announced their iPhone, and the smartphone revolution had begun. Personally, I had been using the HP iPac smartphone since around 2001, but it was mostly a market for nerds until Apple made it cool. So here again in 2007, the true potential of information operations using social media was just being understood. So right from the beginning, they were ready to dump millions and billions into, making it a weapon. And they succeeded. Having pioneered this weapon as social media fake news, I was able to recognize when other countries or organizations were using it to tactically target and influence. It took me all of a few seconds to recognize it was being used by whom I believe was either North Korea or Russia to influence social chaos during the Michael Brown riots, and I published this in my blog online in 2014. So he's had a blog running for quite a while here, and in that old link to the old site he had, you might be able to find these blogs. I went there, like I said, it was kind of a jumbled mess, so I didn't spend too much time clicking around searching there. But if you want to do it, go ahead and see what you find. Apparently there's a blog in 2014 where he points out IIA use in Michael Brown riots. It says, when I was working on a Defense Department contract in South Korea. Oh, so, okay, he did that blog post while he was in South Korea working on a contract. So he was out of country at the time, but he's seen the telltale signs of IIA. And then he says, I warned about IIA being used to alter the outcome of the 2016 presidential election in 2015. So a year before the election, he was already warning about it being used to alter the outcome. I also believe I recognized it being used March 2017 by the British intelligence agency GCHQ using a, quote, journalist known as Louisa Mensch to harm President Trump. I spotted Louisa on Twitter by her use of IIA nomenclatures. She used terms that someone not trained in IIA wouldn't know, and I quickly made her connection with the British Intelligence Agency, the GCHQ, from there. I responded to one of her tweets asking how she knew so much about IIA when seemingly nobody else online had any clue. She responded to me in typical Twitter trash fashion, calling me Hitler or Putin. I can't remember for sure, as she calls anyone who threatens her that. I responded with the fact I didn't think such attacks were warranted, having served in uniform in Afghanistan alongside British soldiers. At that point, even her supporters said she was out of line, but she continued with hateful remarks rather than addressing my question. I felt somewhat vindicated when I saw a WikiLeaks posting of an email between Louisa Mensch and the Clinton campaign back in 2016. So WikiLeaks email leak shows that this Mensch was in contact with the Clinton campaign, which he says Clinton campaign was using IIA running up to the election. Here's my suspicions were further confirmed by this tweet from Louisa. And the tweet says, "Love this political ad featuring Putin. Thanks for the front facing this something." And then this Louise says, "I'm good, aren't I? Give it up, guys." I'm not sure what exactly that means, but Bergie goes on, "Don't get me wrong, I don't believe she carries a GCHQ employee card. Or if she did at one time, she's a nut job and they would have cut ties with her. Best guess is they merely contract her services and use her to, quote, launder illegally collected intelligence they want made public, as is a common between intelligence agencies and, quote, journalists. This is how IIA works. You put together content, whether it's faking what is happening at a protest to incite violence and rioting, or a dossier with just enough believable information that the media can use to run it based on unnamed sources. You then have journalists like Louise Mensch on your payroll disseminate the fake content either to news websites your organization created to launder this type of fake content, oftentimes looking like or even being legitimate news organizations. So, and this is how it works, folks. They will illegally collect intelligence, and they can't, use it legally, so they'll leak it out to journalists who, are under their payroll or assets for them, and they disseminate it out through fake avenues like that. They have news organizations that they created, and then they'll leak stuff out to like that. And just think, this is just a simple example. Think how deep it really goes. Think of all your alternative media internet daddies you go to and just love for your internet news. You ever wonder where they get their topics to cover? Or where they get their information they're putting out? How are they so up to speed on all this information? You think they're spending every minute of their free time just researching to bring you information? Most of that information's coming from somewhere. It's probably given to them almost like a script. Like, here, cover this. And it's, no coincidence that certain topics, they all make the rounds through alternative media together. Because that's what they want you to absorb. They want you to consume that information. That's how IIA is working to manipulate you. And it's only going to get worse. It's going to get to the point where old Klaus Schwab's best advisor says you have no free will anymore. Your decisions are not your own. It's going to come down to that. Continuing on with Bergie, it is not uncommon for two or more, quote, journalists on the program's payroll to collaborate on dissemination of the fake content. So you could have two or more people on their payroll collaborating and disseminating the fake news. And it looks all independent, huh? Boy, that sounds like the current alternative media landscape right now to me. Two or more people on payroll collaborating to disseminate fake content. not even so much fake, just limited hangout. Get you in with the truth and then purple pill you with the BS. Luis is not your average British Twitter trash. And if I'm saying Luis wrong or whatever, I'm sorry, but it looks like Louisa to me, so I'm saying Louisa. Prior to her time in the British government, she was a roadie for the rock band Metallica and authored articles teaching young girls how to sleep with bands. Knowing that, she regularly appears on U.S. mainstream news media to spew her uniquely batshit crazy brand of anti-Trump hate. Look closely, you will see the shows she is primarily given such an international anti-Trump platform on are shows in which the hosts were also outed in WikiLeaks' release of journalists that collaborated with the DNC and the Clinton campaign. This helps to support my earlier claims of journalists collaborating, often under paid IIA contracts. I estimate an IIA PSYOP program like what the DNC and Clinton campaign ran with the fake British dossier likely cost around $6 to $8 million to produce. It is some coincidence that news reports now show the Clinton campaign paid the same law firm that acted by proxy for the Clintons was paid around $10 million. Coincidence? Maybe. Can I prove any of this? No. That is the problem when you're dealing with a tactical IIA program. The covert nature of the program leaves little or no evidence if done correctly. And with that kind of money, you can bet they were some of the best. If you know what you're looking for, like me, you can at best see tells that help you piece the puzzle together. But knowing what I did for the military, there isn't an intelligence agency on the planet that would ever see any breadcrumbs that I didn't want them to find as part of the PSYOP. The worst thing is, I'm not sure any of this would even be illegal. So he's saying the worst thing is, he's not sure any of what they're doing is even illegal. So it's most likely all legal what they're doing. And if it is illegal, they have loopholes to make it legal for them, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So, and here's in his book, Victim of the Swamp, How the Deep State Destroyed the 40-Year-Old Private. I go into IIA in much greater detail without violating the top secret clearance. I'm able to do this because IIA's very nature, the content is public and thus unclassified. Additionally, the applications we developed for the military were kept by the company I was hired by to develop it. So the applications, that he developed were kept by the company that hired him, to develop it. And that's General Jim Jones's company. General Jim Jones owns that company. And they offer this tactical military-grade PSYOP application commercially to the public. So Jim Jones cashed in on this taxpayer-funded application. And now everybody can use it. IIA all around for everybody. What I can't discuss is what, if anything, we ever did with it, or the actual dissemination process itself. Being one of the few IIA applications available to the public, and the close ties to the company's owners and John McCain, whom I put at the top of my suspect list as someone the Clinton campaign would have coordinated with, it wouldn't surprise me if a later version of my original design wasn't used by the Clinton campaign to pull this off. So they likely have done revisions on his application, and it's probably on version 2.0, 3.0, who knows how much it's been upgraded since he created it in, the late 2000s. So, excuse me. But it's, commercially available. And I'd like to know what the application is. I'll have to do a little research and see if I can find what exactly this IIA application is that's commercially available and how much it would cost. And I said I'd like to read his book because he said he goes into IIA in much greater detail. So it'd be interesting what more he divulges there to us. I see some archives here. dating back. So I wonder what other info he has. But this here was a good piece of information from him. So he's definitely in the know, and is definitely, the pioneer of this. And if anyone can spot them using, what he pioneered, it would be him. So when he's calling out IIA operations, you might want to listen, because he might be on to something. But then again, always be suspicious, because I'm always suspicious of people who've been on the inside and now they're on the outside, trying to help, the little person. So always be wary, but go where the information takes you. So that's kind of it for Patrick Bergy here. If you want to look into it more, do so. I think I might look into it more. I know Brendan O'Connell calls him out, says he's pretty much nothing but a pothead now, doing podcasts and taking bong hits and not really speaking out or standing up for anything. But whether that's true or not, I don't know. But he definitely has put out some good information here for people to find and see, and show you the depth of how ingrained this has become into our digital age and the social media. Like I said, this started right at the beginning of social media, right at the beginning of YouTube, the Facebook, and they seen the potential of it, and I think they discovered it had more potential than they ever could have imagined. Like the potential to take away your free will and make daily decisions for yourself. That's how much potential it has by manipulating your thoughts and your emotions and your thinking. They can almost control every factor of your life through this. I don't know if they ever imagined that, it had this much depth to it when they first started this. And we're going to touch on that here in these publications. I found the part where it goes into emotions and stuff. So let's continue here. All right, so here's that memorandum, the very first, that lays out the policy for IIA, and that's June 2007. And I already read it's for all these secretaries and joint chiefs and commanders of the combatant commands and undersecretaries. And I want to point out that when they say combatant commanders, those are the commanders of groups. And these groups are groups of the military, but they're not separate anymore. Like, it's not Army, Marines, Air Force, like, separated. They have people from all the branches of military in groups now, and they must call them like combatant groups, and the commanders of those groups are called combatant commanders. So when they say combatant commanders, they're talking about a commander of a group that consists of people from all the different branches. So all the different branches of military are working together in these combatant groups and carrying out these IIA operations. So they're no longer separated and kept segregated. They're all working together under DOD orders. So here, subject: policy for Department of Defense interactive internet activities. Purpose: IIA are an essential part of DOD's responsibilities to provide information to the public, shape the security environment, and support military operations. This policy provides authority and guidance for these activities. Definition: this policy defines IIA as the use of system accessible via the internet which allows for two-way communications. Example given: email, blogs, chat rooms, and internet bulletin boards in a timely, if not real-time basis, as opposed to a system in which information flows only one way. So there's that real-time basis that I touched on, Brendan brought up, and I covered it in a previous video. They can monitor the landscape, online digital social landscape in real time and manipulate it in real time. That's how effective this is. They can change it in real time. Scope. This policy applies to public affairs activities and to programs, products, and actions that shape emotions, motives, reasoning, and behaviors of selected foreign entities. Now, they're applying this to foreign, whatever, but we know that. Authority. Geographic combatant commanders and commander, U.S. Special Operations Command, when designated as the supported commander, are hereby delegated the approval authority for IIA in support of their operations and public affairs activities. The Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs is hereby delegated the approval authority for public affairs, IIA, conducted by the Office of the Secretary of Defense and the military departments. Military departments' IIA will be for purposes of addressing manpower issues within or organizing, training, and equipping their departments. The commanders of the combatant commands and the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs are responsible and accountable for ensuring that such activities follow this policy. Neither the commanders of the combatant commands nor the ASDPA, which is that public affairs, may delegate authorities provided in this policy. So this kind of gives them broad authority to use IIA. And that's what this article was talking about. An ever-expanding war, legal aspects of online strategic communication, which is pretty much legal aspects of IIA. And it goes down through here, and we'll just cover this now and get it out of the way. Pretty much it questions the legality of this IIA and talks about how they have broad power to initiate IIA pretty much whenever they want. There's really no oversight to it. When they deem it a PSYOP operation or public affairs operation or something like that, they can just initiate operations. There's no oversight. They're given full authority to do so, and they pretty much have run of the game. And that's the way this works. And this is under Department of Defense. Not to mention what the intelligence agencies can do. So they pretty much have no oversight and no control on what they can do. So that's the legal aspects of your IIA. If you want to review this, look it up. It's on army.mil. Just search for IIA, and this will probably be one of the first searches that comes up. And there's Millie Weaver. I'll have to rewatch Shadowgate. I think I watched it when it came out, but I don't remember what quite the detail was. But be skeptical of all the information in there with Millie Weaver of Information Warfare, InfoWars. I'm sure there's an ulterior angle that is getting pushed in this film. And apparently it made Bergie speak out about it. So I'm not sure why he came out and then popped on Alex Jones there with that controversy. So have your discernment hat on when you're diving into that. Really, when you're diving into anything, but it's okay. They have broad operation to carry all this stuff out. All right, so content. IIA within the scope of this policy will be accurate and true in fact and intent. The Undersecretary of Defense for Policy will coordinate with the department's IIA, with the U.S. Department of State. Combatant commanders will coordinate IIA with the U.S. ambassadors as appropriate. So they want them to coordinate with ambassadors when they're doing it to other countries. Intellectual property. Messages and materials protected by law, such as graphics, pictures, video, and illustrations used in any IIA activity, will comply with relevant intellectual property laws. Commercial gain or endorsement. IIA activities will not operate for commercial gain and will not promote or endorse financial or other interest of commercial or non-governmental entities. Well, that kind of flies in the face of Jim Jones retaining that application technology and then making it commercially available for financial gain, wouldn't it? Or maybe that was after it was already developed and stuff. I don't know. They make money hand over fist from everything on your tax dollar. Media. Combatant commanders and ASDPA will ensure that only public affairs personnel engage in IIA activities with journalists employed by media organizations, including news websites, online bulletin boards, and blog sites affiliated with news organizations. So this is talking about them engaging with mainstream media. And this is where they bring in the public affairs personnel to engage in there. But listen to this part. Some individuals and websites not affiliated with established news organizations, meaning not affiliated with mainstream media, have become recognized news sources for large audiences. Those are your public influencers. Those are your YouTube channels, your Instagram channels, your Twitter channel. Well, I'm calling them channels, but your Twitter accounts, YouTube accounts, Instagram accounts, Facebook accounts. They're recognizing these accounts and how they're sources for large audiences, millions of subscribers. And it says, giving them stature equivalent to an established news organization. So they're seeing that these people building up a big social media following are getting equivalent stature to mainstream media. And it says, only public affairs organizations may engage such designated individuals and websites. It is the responsibility of all combatant commanders to determine when the internet communications of specific individuals and websites rise to a level equivalent to a news organization. So that's them picking out and identifying which social media influencers meet their level to equal mainstream media. And then that's when they will approach those people and they will get them under their thumb. They will send out the mystery checks each month that pays them the shekels to continue pushing the information they are doing, or pays them to push different information that they want pushed, or whatever. But you better believe that people are being approached behind the scenes and getting mystery checks monthly to push narratives. They recognize this big time, especially when mainstream media is failing so, and the alternative media is booming with big accounts and channels and followers. They have all been approached, and it's not even so much as approaching them and being like, here, you need to talk about this information. It might be somebody who's putting out information that's already serving an agenda. So they'll just reach out to them and be like, hey, you're doing good work. Here's $2,000 a month. Keep doing what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing, covering the information that you're covering. You keep doing that, you'll keep getting your mystery checks. So it's like useful idiots. Not everyone, is directly taking orders and, pushing direct information given to them. There's useful idiots out there that are, covering whatever area of information just because, that's what interests them, or, that's a current grift they got going, and it just so happens to fall in line with what they want to push. So, useful idiot, here you go, here's money, keep doing what you're doing. Here's contractor involvement. Contracts or task orders that provide support for approved IIA activities within the scope of this policy will fully detail the scope of the work it will provide for rigorous U.S. government oversight. So this says they can contract out IIA activities. Quality assurance. Combatant commanders and ASDPA are accountable and responsible for quality assurance of IIA activities conducted under their purview and for ensuring that the implications of their actions beyond the intended audience are addressed. IIA activities will be conducted in the language and idiom of the intended audience. Special attention must be given to use only culturally appropriate messages and materials. So that's kind of saying how they know their target audience, and they put out the propaganda that is culturally appropriate. It kind of plays on how Trump knew everything to say, and how Cambridge Analytica data mined, people's feelings and current trends, and they gave Donald Trump all the key words, to say. He completely bonded with the culture at the time, and everyone just loved him for it, including me. I was a locker up, fan. And then 2 weeks after he got elected, he apologized and said, poor Hillary, she's been through enough, let's leave her alone. And like that, I was done with Trump. I seen he was a shill and a liar, and he was not for us immediately. And that's when I kind of began my truth journey there, because then Las Vegas happened, and I found the online truth community, and I've invested a lot of time since then researching and learning, and I've gotten farther than most people will ever get on here. So that's why I'm just trying to help with all the knowledge I've got. I'm trying to share it, I'm trying to teach, and I'm trying to help everyone out there. Because this stuff, this IIA right here, this is deep and this is serious. Like the part 1 here, like Brendan said, we are at war. Our lives depend upon it. So we need to wake up, and we need to take the gold pill, and we need to see all this stuff that no one else can see. Because everything is targeted at you. Everything. Attribution. All IIA activities within the scope of this policy will be attributable according to one of the 3 methods below. All OSD and military department IIA activities will be U.S. attribution only. For military operations, combatant commanders will determine the appropriate attribution method. U.S. attribution. This attribution method openly acknowledges U.S. involvement in IIA activities. This disclosure must be made in the content of the email or product, or in the initial phase of engaging in online exchanges. All public affairs IIA activities will use this attribution method. Concurring partner nation attribution. This method allows IIA activities developed by DOD to be attributable to a concurring partner nation. Both the partner nation and the appropriate U.S. chief of mission must agree to this attribution method before it is used. Non-attribution. This method allows the combatant commander to disseminate information without clear attribution. When asked if the U.S. government or DOD is the source of the specific activity, DOD will acknowledge its involvement as soon as operationally feasible, as determined by the combatant commander. If a combatant commander believes that it will not be possible due to operational considerations to attribute the internet activity to DOD, he will request an exception to policy. This method is only authorized for named operations in the global war on terrorism, or when specified in other Secretary of Defense execute orders. So pretty much they can do this and not take blame for it, or not own up to it. Periodic review. The Strategic Communication Integration Group Executive Committee will initiate an annual review of IIA activities within the scope of this policy. So it pretty much means they'll kind of review what's going on there, and they got to provide a summary of their IA activities containing samples of representative products and providing measures of performance and effectiveness and best practices. The USOCOM, in consultation with JFCOM, will produce a publication of best practices for IIA. USOCOM, in consultation with JFCOM, will update this publication on an annual basis. This publication and all updates will be submitted to Deputy Secretary of Defense, supported by the SIG-XCOM for review and approval. Exceptions. Requests for additional authorities and recommended changes to this policy will be directed to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, supported by the SIG-XCOM for review and approval. Signed, England. So that is the original memorandum on IIA. And that's a pretty interesting piece of information there, just the 2 pages of it. Gives you a good layout of IIA. And from that it's 3 pages. From that 3-page memorandum in 2007, it has evolved to this. Oh, not this. This one. And this is Information Operations. They kind of changed the name of it there. This is Joint Publication 313, Information Operations, or IIA. And this is November 2012, and with an incorporating change of 2014, and it's gone from the 3 pages to this is 87 pages. Where they're getting down to it now. They're getting it into a science. So let's get me back to where I was in here. Because this is what I want to talk about next. And this was the thesis we went over with the influence operations in the internet, a 21st century issue. And that influence operations was a predecessor terminology to information operations. So it kind of went from IIA to influence operations, IO, to information operations, IO. And we kind of went over this already, but this was done in 2009. So Patrick Bergy kind of pioneered it in 2007, 2008, up to 2009. And then 2009 here, they already got this paper out where they're, doing a thesis on new opportunities for it and changes to it and challenges for it and changing the pejorative terminology and revising the Smith-Mundt Act. And they took all those suggestions to heart and they initiated a lot of that stuff. I spoke about, I do believe they changed the Smith-Mundt Act since then. So they changed and have adapted it, and they're continually upgrading it, making it better, and it brings you to this the 2012-2014 update, the information operations publication here, and I'm on page 10 where it gets executive summary, the commander's overview. This says provides an overview of information operations and the information environment. So in this publication, when it says information operations, it means IIA. And they just call it IO. Describes IO and its relationships and integration, addresses IO authorities, responsibilities, and legal considerations, explains integrating information-related capabilities into the joint operation planning process, covers multinational information operations. In the overview, the instruments of national power, diplomatic, informational, military, and economic, provide leaders in the U.S. with the means and ways of dealing with crises around the world. Employing these means in the information environment requires the ability to securely transmit, receive, store, and process information in near real time. The nation state and non-state adversaries are equally aware of the significance of this new technology and will use information-related capabilities, IRCs, to gain advantages in the information environment, just as they would use more traditional military technologies to gain advantages in other operational environments. As the strategic environment continues to change, so does information operations. And over here on the left, it says, the ability to share information in near real time, anonymously and or securely, is a capability that is both an asset and a potential vulnerability to us, our allies, and our adversaries. Based on these changes, the Secretariat of Defense now characterizes I.O. as the integrated employment during military operations of IRCs in concert with other lines of operation to influence, disrupt, corrupt, or usurp the decision-making of adversaries and potential adversaries while protecting our own. So when they talk about adversaries and potential adversaries and terrorists and whatever else, do realize they mean you. They're not talking about Hajis over in Iraq or Iran, or Russians in Ukraine, or Indians in India, or Latinos in South America. They do mean those people, but they mean you too. You are an adversary. Like I said, after 9/11 and under the Patriot Act, anyone speaking out about the government or in opposition to the powers that be, they are domestic terrorists. And they are labeled and deemed as such under their corrupt law. If we are terrorists, we are adversaries. So when you hear that, just realize they're talking about you. They're talking about us. They're talking about me. We are their enemy. And this is used against us because, according to their corrupt laws, we are domestic terrorists now. We are criminals. We are adversaries. Therefore, they can deploy all this upon us. So here, the information environment. The information environment is the aggregate of individuals, organizations, and systems that collect, process, disseminate, or act on information. This environment consists of 3 interrelated dimensions, which continuously interact with individuals, organizations, and systems. These dimensions are known as physical, informational, and cognitive. The physical dimension is composed of command and control systems, key decision makers, and supporting infrastructure that enable individuals and organizations to create effects. The informational dimension specifies where and how information is collected, processed, stored, disseminated, and protected. The cognitive dimension encompasses the minds of those who transmit, receive, and respond to or act on information. IRCs are the tools, techniques, or activities that affect any of the 3 dimensions of the information environment. And I do believe the IRC stands for the information-related capabilities. Let me just scroll back up here and make sure of that. They have so many acronyms, it's hard to remember what they all mean. Yes, information-related capabilities. So when they say IRCs, it's information-related capabilities. All right. Let's see. Is there any important information here? So I'll read this over in the left, this pink print. The Joint Force Commander's operational environment is the composite of the conditions, circumstances, and influences that affect employment of capabilities and bear on the decisions of the commander, encompassing physical areas and factors of the air, land, maritime, and space domains, as well as the information environment, which includes cyberspace, the information and influence relational framework, and the application of information-related capabilities. Okay, so the purple/pink font over here is kind of like a heading for the paragraph on the right. So it says the information and influence relational framework and the application of information related capabilities. And it says IRCs are the tools, techniques, or activities that affect any of the three dimensions of the information environment. The joint force is the means, employs IRCs, which are the ways, to affect the information provided to or disseminated from the target audience, which target audience is TA, in the physical and informational dimensions of the information environment to affect decision making. So this stuff gets technical. You start reading these, they have so many policies and frameworks and stuff laid out that you need to be an intelligent person just to understand it. Let alone what the average IQ and intelligence level of your average American is. And this stuff is just over the majority of people's heads. So it makes you wonder, who creates all these policies and publications and procedures and everything? Because this is high-level intellect, that's creating this. How all the people who follow it and are subordinate to it, how they all understand it and carry it out. It's beyond me, but it's even a little difficult for me here to understand all this stuff with all the acronyms and jargon talk. So here's the information operations, which is pretty much IIA. The relational framework describes the application, integration, and synchronization of IRCs to influence, disrupt, corrupt, or usurp the decision-making of target audiences to create a desired effect to support achievement of an objective. Joint Force Commanders, JFCs, may establish an IO staff to provide command-level oversight and collaborate with all staff directorates and supporting organizations on all aspects of IO. Most combatant commands include an IO staff to serve as the focal point for IO. Faced with an ongoing or emerging crisis within a geographic combatant commander's area of responsibility, a Joint Force Commander can establish an IO cell to provide additional expertise and coordination across the staff and interagency. Alright, let me see here. We might skip down a little bit. Because all that stuff I was reading here, it's pretty salty and dense information. I don't think there's really anything super important in there. Alright, we'll go down to where the emotions here. We'll just go to the conclusion, because this is the information operations assessment. And then it has the conclusion. This publication provides joint doctrine for the planning, preparation, execution, and assessment of information operations across the range of military operations. So it provides all that for IIA operations across all the military operations. Chapter 1, Overview. So this here is where I said they're targeting everything about you, the target audience. I kind of glanced over these charts they had in the first video. And this is the information environment they talked about. There's the three dimensions of it. The physical, the informational, and the cognitive dimension. And they will manipulate all three of those dimensions, to achieve their goal. And if they get it down pat enough, they will control pretty much all of your thoughts and decision making. Let's just start reading here a second for the introduction, chapter 1's overview. They even have a quote here. The most hateful human misfortune is for a wise man to have no influence. That's Greek historian Herodotus, 484 BC. So, introduction. A. The growth of communication networks has decreased the number of isolated populations in the world. The emergence of advanced wired and wireless information technology facilitates global communication by corporations, violent extremist organizations, and individuals. The ability to share information in near real time, anonymously and or securely, is a capability that is both an asset and potential vulnerability to us, our allies, and our adversaries. Information is a powerful tool to influence, disrupt, corrupt, or usurp an adversary's ability to make and share decisions. So I think I read that paragraph up there. So if they like that as an overview. And it says the instruments of national power, diplomatic, informational, military, and economic, provide leaders in the United States with the means and ways of dealing with crises around the world, even at home, Employing these means in the information environment requires the ability to securely transmit, receive, store, and process information in near real time. Okay. The information environment. So we got the physical dimension. It's composed of command and control systems, the key decision makers, supporting infrastructure that enable individuals and organizations to create effects. And you got the informational dimension. It encompasses where and how information is collected, processed, stored, disseminated, and protected. It's the dimension where the C2 of military forces is exercised and where the commander's intent is conveyed. Action in this dimension affects the content and flow of information. And here's the cognitive dimension. The cognitive dimension encompasses the minds of those who transmit, receive, and respond to or act on information. It refers to individuals or groups' information processing, perception, judgment, and decision-making. These elements are influenced by many factors to include individual and cultural beliefs, norms, vulnerabilities, motivations, emotions, experiences, morals, education, mental health, identities, ideologies, etc., etc., etc. They take all that into factor when they're targeting the cognitive dimension. There is no aspect of your mind that they are not targeting with these IIA operations. It says defining these influencing factors in a given environment is critical for understanding how to best influence the mind of the decision maker and create the desired effects. As such, this dimension constitutes the most important component of the information environment. And where do they get their data to best understand and compile this information? Social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that data mining, all of your private information and your daily dealings and what you had for lunch and what you're eating for dinner and the dessert you had and the band you seen at the bar and the big poo you took this morning and all that information you willingly put online in your social media, that is all data mined and harvested. And now they have the ammo to target you with IIA that interacts on your cultural beliefs, your norms, your vulnerabilities, your motivations, your emotions, your experiences, your morals, your education, your mental health, your identities, your ideologies. They know all that now. And they can target it. They can target all that because you just willingly put out all your private information on the internet and social media. And it's all been hoovered right up into their data mining centers, and now they have everything they need. They can tailor make IIA operations for you. You know what they always say with the AI out there and stuff, and the profile data points they have on people, they know you better than you know yourself. The computer AI can probably predict what you're going to do before you even know you're going to do it. That is the level of these IIA operations. That's why old Klaus Schwab's advisor talking about, the free will is over. Your daily decision making at the grocery store is a thing of the past. It's all going to be controlled. It's because they are ironing out the technology that is going to allow them to manipulate the masses on a whole to do what they want. And the masses are going to be none the wiser to it. They're just going to do it thinking that they're the ones, they're deciding this and that. And, they're the ones that are doing this and that. And they're just being manipulated and steered through all these tactics. This is how big technology is. This is how powerful technology is. And it's only going to get worse the more we immerse ourselves in it. And they don't have any plans of taking it away anytime soon. That's why I say all the people out there fear-porning, the blackout, the lights out event, we're going to have no power. No, that's not going to happen. That's their control system. The internet and the digital realm is their control system. They're not going to get rid of that. It's going to be fully functional. Now, the only thing I could see happening would be to take it down for a brief period, to eliminate some people, like bring it down maybe for a couple months maybe, eliminate whatever, and then bring it right back up. And then whoever's left will be herded, right back into it. But even that I don't see. I don't see them bringing down the power grid or getting rid of their digital Trojan horse they have. There is too much potential and too much control from the internet and the online digital landscape. It's too valuable for them. They're not going to do a lights out on that. I'm sorry. We're going to retain our power. We're going to retain our internet. We just need to worry about other stuff besides that, like what they're trying to put into our bodies against our will, and why are they so damned on everyone getting it put in there, and the digital social credit score and the digital banking, and hurting us more and more into this digital landscape where they will have total control over everything. Anything we buy, we do, everything will be up for their evaluation and permission and whatever. That's what we need to worry about. Not worried about the lights going out. That's I personally do not think that's going to happen. There's just too much control factor there. So that's one of the most important parts of this IIA that I wanted to hit home here. The cognitive dimension. How they are targeting all those factors of the individual. And how they know all those factors is because people willingly putting it out on social media. Even your comments, commenting on videos and your Twitter comments, what you say in there, they can extract that, and use to figure out those data points, Like it says here, your beliefs, your vulnerabilities. So if you talk about how you hate spiders or something dumb, I hate snakes. Well, that's a vulnerability that they now know. It could be exploited at some time. Your motivations, your emotions, experiences. You put out any experiences you had. That can be collected, used against you. They take all them and they can tailor make propaganda specifically for you. It makes me wonder what the IIA application applications were that Bergie created. What exactly did they do? What kind of applications are they? Are they tailor-making propaganda for people, those applications? I don't know. I'd have to see, what the application's like, or what it is, how it works. I'll have to look into that more. Curious about that. So then it just kind of goes on here. It goes to number 3, which number 2 was the information environment. Number 3 is the information and influence relational framework and the application of information-related capabilities. So the application of IRCs. And the IRCs are the tools, techniques, or activities that affect any of the 3 dimensions of information environment. So you have the information environment with the 3 dimensions, and they use IRCs to affect and manipulate that environment. The IRCs affect the ability of the target audience to collect, process, or disseminate information before and after decisions are made. The target audience is the individual or group selected for influence. The joint force, which is the means, employs the IRCs, which are the ways, to affect the information provided to or disseminated from the target audience in the physical and informational dimensions of the information environment to affect decision making. Then it goes on. Then this chart kind of expands. And I kind of went over this here in the first video, where they show you how the information flows. You got your 3 dimensions here. You got your target audience. So this is your target audiences. Well, they have the key influencers, the mass audiences, the vulnerable populations. Information's flowing back and forth to them. And they just, they create a means. They have the ways, to introduce those means. And ultimately, they get an end, a consequence of the way of applying IRCs. So it's kind of almost like a problem, reaction, solution framework. A means, a ways, and an ends that they do this here. Then it goes, deeper into here. The purpose of integrating the employment of IRCs is to influence a target audience. While the behavior of individuals and groups as human social entities are principally governed by rules, norms, and beliefs, the behaviors of systems principally reside within the physical and informational dimensions and are governed only by rules. Under this construct, rules, norms, and beliefs are, it says, rules, explicit regulative processes such as policies; norms, regulative mechanisms accepted by the social collective; beliefs, the collective perception of fundamental truths governing behavior. And it says, the first step in achieving an end through use of the information influence relational framework is to identify the target audience. Once the target audience has been identified, it will be necessary to develop an understanding of how that target audience perceives its environment, to include analysis of target audience's rules, norms, and beliefs. Once this analysis is complete, the application of means available to achieve the desired end must be evaluated. So like I said, they have this down to a science. They have it down to a science, and with the help of software and AI and programming, they have it down pat even more so. What's this black print? Therefore, in information operations, it is not the ownership of the capabilities and techniques that is important, but rather their integrated application in order to achieve a JFC's end state. And then it goes down here, application of means to achieve influence. So this is showing how they inject means into the flow of information of target audiences and how that achieves influence. And then they bring in more here. You got the means, and then it shows you ways. And then those are IRCs injected into mass audiences, vulnerable populations. And their charts just keep getting bigger and bigger. Oh, here's another quote. Let's see what they put in with this quote. There is a war out there, old friend, a world war. And it's not about who's got the most bullets. It's about who controls the information. Cosmo in the 1992 film Sneakers. So they know. They know the new gold is data. And who controls the information going forward is pretty much controlling the leverage. Now, we've seen this chart here in the previous video about notional operation plan phases. And I haven't really read into this to understand it, so I'm not sure what all this means. But they have, start out with, this is level of military effort. I'm not sure what this axis is, but it goes from shaping activities to deterring activities to seizing the initiative activities, to dominating activities, to stabilizing activities, to enabling civil authority activity. And this is like phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5. So it goes from shape to deter to seize initiative to dominate to stabilize to enable civil authority, and then back to shape. So I'm not sure I quite understand any of that. But if you want to look into it and read it and understand it, go for it. Here's an example. Application of information-related capabilities. So application of IRCs to the information and influence relational framework. And it kind of gives you an example. Desired effects. Citizens have confidence and ability of government to support and protect its people. Adversary is unable to overthrow government of country X. Potential target audience / audiences. Adversary leadership. Country X indigenous population. Friendly, neutral, and potential adversary. Potential means available to achieve the commander's objective. Diplomatic action, informational assets, military forces, economic resources, commercial, cultural, or other private enterprise assets, potential ways, targeted radio and television broadcasts, blockaded adversary ports, government commercially operated websites, key leadership engagement. And it says, regardless of the means and ways employed by the players within the information environment, the reality is that the strategic advantage rests with whoever applies their means and ways most efficiently. So that's interesting there. So, they give you sample scenarios, of how it kind of starts out here. Situation. An adversary is attempting to overthrow the government of country X using both lethal and non-lethal means to demonstrate to the citizens that the government is not fit to support and protect its people. Boy, they should have just said, an adversary is attempting to overthrow the government of Libya, because that sounds like what the three-letter agencies do all the time, putting their noses in our countries. So they can go in there and achieve objectives. Joint Force Commander's objective: protect government of country X from being overthrown. So there. And that could be an IIA operation, in the digital age doing that. They go IO cells, IO staff, information operations cell chief, their functions, notional information operations cell. So, like I said, to carry this out, costs a lot of money, apparently. You got large groups here, and I wonder how much compartmentalization there is within this. Like, how much do people know what they're doing in here? Here's civil military operations. You know, Bergie said that suspected DNC IIA operation of the fake dossier cost $6 to $8 million. There's cyberspace operations. So that's about all I wanted to cover there. Like I said, this keeps going. This is 87 pages, this publication, and this 313 publication is all about IIA. You want to learn more about IIA? Read this whole thing. I'll probably never read it all, but if I ever need to reference it or get more about a specific thing, I'm definitely gonna use it. Like I said, I saved them all, PDF files. You can go down here, they have all the glossary, all the acronyms they use. Here's terms and definitions. And this 313 is the IIA publication, but then you got 313.2, 313.4, which the point 2 is the psychological operations, the point 4 is the military deception. So they're all components of the IIA. So, like I said, this is in-depth stuff. This is in-depth stuff being used against you to control your mind, pretty much. And I have this part here saved to cover on the 313.2, the psychological operation publication. And they changed it, like I said in the previous video, they changed it from psychological operations to military information support operations, MISO. And it says, MISO play an important role in DOD communication efforts through the planned use of directed programs specifically designed to support U.S. government and DOD activities and policies. MISO are planned operations to convey selected information and indicators to foreign audiences to influence their emotions, motives, objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of foreign governments, organizations, groups, and individuals in a manner favorable to the originator's objectives. Military information support professionals follow a deliberate process that aligns commanders' objectives with an analysis of the environment, select relevant target audiences, develop focused, culturally and environmentally attuned messages and actions, employ sophisticated media delivery means, and produce observable, measurable, behavioral responses. So that's the MISO, what the MISO does, your psychological operations. And this whole one is 108 pages long, and it will tell you all about psychological operations. Except you have to realize that whenever they say MISO, they mean psychological operations. Because as I showed you at the beginning, it tells you what they changed. And what they changed is they replaced the term psychological operations with military information support operations to make it less pejorative. So that is publication 313.2. 2010, Incorporated Change, 2011. So, I do believe that's all I'm going to cover here. This military deception, 313.4, it's only 19 pages long. And it just, it gives you an overview. It provides an overview of military deception and the goals, objectives, functions, and principles. Describes the relationship between military deception and information operations. So what that means is it describes the relationship between military deception and IIA. So they use IIA for military deception. It explains military deception planning methodology and planning steps, and discusses execution of military deception operations. And then it just kind of goes on, explaining that in further detail. 19 pages. I didn't really go into it too much into there. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory military deception, so whatever's contained in here is deception. So that is that. So like I said, if you want to find these documents, just search for them. You'll find them. You can download them. What I did was search interactive internet activities, and one of the first links I got was to this thesis, and the other one was to this memorandum, and then a couple of them were to Bergie's, those 2 pages I covered. And via this thesis, they reference these publication numbers in here, and I would just highlight the like right here, Joint Publication 313, Information Operations, and then right click, search Brave for it, and it kind of comes right up with the link, because they're on military sites they're published on. They're free to download. They're public knowledge. They're out there for anybody. So it's not like it's secret, information or anything. And one thing to point out here on these IIA, kind of one branch of it is public affairs, PA, they call it. So they even have a public affairs, specifically for dealing with the public and carrying out IIA on the public. And this here was a pretty good read, this thesis written by that Rebecca Keller, the Lieutenant Colonel, Air Force, 2010. I'd recommend reading it. Like I said, it's got some good information in it. Disclaimer: the views expressed in this academic research paper are those of the author and do not reflect the official policy or position of the U.S. government or Department of Defense. In accordance with Air Force Instruction 51303, it is not copyrighted, but is the property of the United States government. But yeah, the information was good. Like I said, she's military deception involvement in IIA, psychological operations involvement in IIA, propaganda involvement in IIA, public affairs involvement in IIA, Department of State involvement. It kind of explains, all that. Here's the new opportunities for the military deception, PSYOP, social networking. So it gives you, good information into this. Kind of an easier read. Not so much jargon as the joint publications. So you might want to check this one out here too. It says the introduction: the conduct of information operations, IIA, which includes military deception and psychological operations by United States military, is based on both doctrinal precedents and operational necessity. The increasing use of cyber technology and the internet in executing IIA missions offers technological advantages while simultaneously being a minefield fraught with legal and cultural challenges. Using joint and Air Force doctrinal publications, published books, and academic papers, this thesis first defines relevant terminology and then identifies current operational and legal constraints in the execution of IIA using cyber technology. It concludes with recommended remediation actions to enhance the use of the internet as a military IIA tool in today's cyber world. So it's kind of like after 3 years of development and kind of getting out and deployed into the military branches, she does a thesis on it, which is kind of, kind of a critical analysis of it, so to say. And it kind of pretty much lays out what I just read there. It defines relevant terminology, and then it identifies current operational and legal constraints and the execution of it. And then, it gives recommended remediation to enhance the use of it. And so it's a critical analysis of the early operation technology, after a few years of development. So, it's good. It's good information. I recommend reading that. And she has all her references for stuff here. And one of the things she references is that I closed it, that one tab I had open, which pretty much said about the legal aspect, and I said how they kind of have free reign of it. That was one of her links. And that's pretty much it. Old Bergie, I might have to look into him more. He seems like an interesting character, and his book seems interesting. So I urge you all, look into this more. This information here that I just laid out is very, very important. This, this lays it all out. This gives you the groundwork of what they're doing to you. So the more you know about, the applications they're using against you, the better prepared you are to spot it and not have it affect you. See how Bergie talked, him being a pioneer of it, he was able to spot, the likely use of it, being used to control certain scenarios, like he's seen with those Brown riots and protesting, and then with the election, and then after the election, he thought it was used. So, he's aware of all that, so he can see that. So the more that you educate yourself with, these applications that they have, the more you know about the techniques used against you, the more you're going to be able to spot it. You're going to be able to see, this stuff. You're going to begin to approach gold-pilled level and be able to spot all the BS, almost instantly. Like I said with this whole Ukraine thing, that's what they wanted you to talk about. It went from C-19 narrative right to Ukraine narrative, just like that. And they were successful. Everybody started talking about that. And then they want to change the subject. They can change the subject whenever they want, and people will automatically follow the new topic to discuss. And we've seen that with the Oscars and Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. Immediately, that was the thing everybody was talking about. Even alternative media. Everybody had an opinion piece on it. Everybody. That was the new thing they wanted everybody to talk about. And everybody fell right in line. Mainstream media and alternative media. And whether, you think that the majority of the alternative media is controlled or not, they still took the bait and carried out the narrative that they wanted. They all talked about it, which is what they wanted. They wanted everybody to talk about that topic for the time being, and that's what they did. And, after that's off, they'll change it to something else. What you hear in media is what they want you to hear. What you are talking about in media is what they want you to talk about. They control it that much. It is so manipulated. It is at that point. It is no coincidence that, mainstream media all covers the same thing and are mostly all in lockstep with each other. And the alternative media has become the same thing. They pretty much all play on one another and are in lockstep with the same hot topics of the time. You have some outliers that like to specialize in, certain topics and certain other things. But the hot pressing mainstream topics, they all cover the same main, the main hot ones. And it just goes, cycles, around the alternative community. Like I've been so immersed in this community the past 6 years that it's so easy to see now. Like I see how the alternative media is controlled. And like I said, whether they're directly controlled or they're just useful idiots, thinking they're helping, but if they're allowed, up online and they have a decent audience and they're putting out stuff, it's because they're serving some kind of purpose. Very rarely does an organic, guy just trying to help, just trying to, spread knowledge to others, rarely does he garner a big influence online. You kind of have to be permitted to garner a big audience. I mean, I haven't been doing this channel very long, and I really haven't been out there putting my channel name out there trying to draw people in, but I think I only have 7 subscribers at the moment. And, I don't cover news like everybody else and the latest, news article and break this down and talk about the same damn thing everyone else talks about. I see the same topic come up 5 times in all the people I keep tabs on. And I don't want to hear the same thing 5 times from 5 different people. I just need it from 1 or 2 good, sources and viewpoints, and then the rest I'll skip because it's just all the same stuff. I'm not going to go repeat all the same stuff. You can get that information from other alternative media. My intention here on YouTube is to get you to a gold pill level where you can see the controlled nature of everything. That's this IIA that they are doing. This is something nobody touches on. Like Bergie said, no one uses the proper nomenclature, IIA, or information operations. This is taking place and nobody talks about it. Nobody sees, and they wonder, why there's the echo chambers and everybody's so separated and segregated, and all the demonetization and the censorship, and it's all orchestrated, it's all intentional, it's all to control their target audience. Okay, guys, I'm tired. Oh my goodness, I'm going on an hour and 45 minutes here. My voice is about spent, so, well, I kind of thought my part 2 would be about an hour, and my part 1 was an hour, but, pushing 2 hours, so I kind of apologize for running a little long here, but I do believe I covered a lot of very important information here in this video. So I hope it helps you. I hope it helps you get to a higher level of thinking, a higher level of understanding the alternative media landscape that we are dealing with here. Understand, what you're doing, what you're watching, how it's affecting you, how they want it to affect you. That's the gold pill level. Get to the gold pill level. And don't forget, the gold pill level has a spiritual nature to it. Seek spirituality. Seek out the Creator. Seek out God. You don't need any help doing it. You can do it yourself on an individual level. Let Him into your heart and progress. Get to a higher spiritual level. Because the change that we need, it starts with you. It starts with you, and it starts inside of you. And we can't change the world for the better if we don't change ourselves. So, we just need to keep learning more, keep getting more wisdom, and, keep seeking out the spiritual nature, that exists, which empowers us and which is inside us. So that's it for my IIA deep dive. Everyone out there, it's been fun. I'm Gold Pilled, signing off the Gold Pilled stream. Peace, everyone.